Did you have any flaneur pursuits on the way to Switzerland, maybe like in the airport or in Switzerland?
Well, airports are always weird places for that kind of thing, aren't they? They are
Airports.
weird. They're a weird sort of, I don't know, mishmash of society. And yeah, it was funny because when we were heading home, so we're in this small airport in Basel. Uh, there was there was a delay. Well, it wasn't a delay actually. They didn't open check-in before 2 hours until the flight, whereas usually like at Heathrow where we flew out, you get 3 hours before the flight to check in. And obviously we've got so much to check in because every one of us has a big bag and a sports chair and a wheel bag and a day chair, and that's like 11 of us. Um, and so when we were going home, when we realized we were early and they hadn't even opened check-in yet, we just filled like the whole queue area with all our sports chairs, and then just so many random like Swiss old couples were just really confused. They like hadn't seen that many disabled people in their life, and they had no idea what was going on. So that was quite interesting. Just seeing like this old lady smile at us, but really she's really angry because we delayed her checking into her flight because we got so many bloody wheelchairs. But it's just one of those things. And also, I find it interesting. I guess the best way to answer that question that you asked was when people are coming onto a plane, because we're wheelchair users, we get put on first, so we're all in our seats on the flight when the rest of the like flight customers come on, and it's just watching people with this kind of frustrated look at how long they've been waiting in the airport, and like people that maybe have been traveling a lot, so they look really tired, or people that are really excited because they're going on an adventure, some sort of holiday or something. It's like there's such a vast array of people and emotions going on, and we're all just being crammed into this metal tube that's then going to go 30,000 feet up in the sky, and everyone's just okay with that. You know, it's rarely that someone freaks out on a plane about what's happening, but really, if you really think about it, it's worthy of freaking out over. So it's interesting.
Did you have a smooth flight? Do you like flying?
I did actually, yeah. It was probably the smoothest I've ever really had. I mean, it was really quick. It was like an hour max, I think, because you literally just go like over France and you're there. But now very smooth takeoff and landing, no real like turbulence and shit. Like it's yeah, pretty smooth, man.
I do think airports are quite deep places. Like, there's a lot of like emotion of, oh, I'm gonna leave you, bye, and then, oh, it's so good to see you again.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give you a lift, and it's like there's a quote that's like, um, ambulances have seen more. No, hospitals have seen more prayers than churches. Airports have seen more tears than therapy, or something like that.
Mm.
Which is interesting. Makes you think, and you get all sorts at airports. You it's a changing of states place, and then and there's always like one person in the family who's scared of flying. Like my mum's quite scared of flying, and you got to kind of. I used to be scared when I was a kid because my ears would hurt, and I'd get like a it like pop.
The popping, yeah.
Yeah. So then I'd have to have a sweet, and that would calm me down a bit. But I used to get quite scared of flying.
You give him a sweet and he'll calm down. I like that. Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, my bringing up English A-level English lit again, but my A-level English literature teacher would call an airport a liminal space, which is a term for a place between two things. So, like purgatory is a perfect example of a liminal space, kind of between where you are now and where you're going, and there's a lot of uncertainty and adventure around a liminal space. I think if you take the time to notice what's going on around you, you can learn a lot about human beings, I think.
And in these flaneurs who existed a couple hundred years ago, what was kind of the purpose of it? Because like it's nice to people watch, it's something to do, but you don't really achieve anything. Like if that's the whole thing, like what is it about it?
Well, I think the Victorian flaneur was like this idea of a very I don't know, a person from the aristocracy who had more money than sense and a lot of free time to just wander about observing people. And so I guess the purpose of it is to just frolic time away, observing the social situation around you. Probably back in those days, you're feeling morally and wealth-wise superior to these people, and sort of, I don't know. It's an interesting one, isn't it? But I feel like we're so deeply social creatures. We do get a lot from observing people if we can be present enough. Like, I feel like if you remember from that video where I talk about that, I talk about a family that I watched. Actually, that might be in the next video that's not out yet. But I was at a premiere in on my own, like fucking seem to be always these days, eating breakfast. And I saw this really happy family of like 4 kids and their parents and their grandparents all together, no iPads, like laughing, chatting. I was like, this is nice. And I got a lot of joy from that. Like, so I don't know. It is interesting.
I'm going to talk about my first point.
Yeah, go for it.
To warm up. So I was thinking about the relationship between beauty and knowledge, and the thought that they're connected and you don't have one without the other. So when you think of something beautiful, I use an example of some art in the gallery. If you don't take the time to figure out what the use of the colour and the symbols and the communication between characters, then it's like eating something without taste buds. It's not the, you have the nice aesthetic of the art, but you don't understand it, and so these two have a very synonymous kind of relationship, and that means kind of you can only get beauty if you know about it. But then there's arguments against it, like if I feel like you don't look at a tree and you don't appreciate the tree because of its name and its origin and its shape of its leaf. You don't have to know that, you just like it. So you like, but then there's the other side of it of like, I thought of the example of like, why do you buy something? Well, you buy it because you know of the brand, or at least a lot of people do. There'd be a certain percentage that don't, but I just like it for the aesthetic value. So is beauty without knowledge still beauty? Yeah, I'll let you think, and I'll let your thoughts, and then I'll add a bit more.
2 sides of the argument have come into my brain, and I can think of 2 examples for them. So if we take the perspective for a moment that we need some degree of knowledge to appreciate beauty, I can see that from a sporting perspective, because I'm going to, you know what I mean, that's a big pillar of my life. But take the game of wheelchair basketball. If you're my grandma and you're coming to watch and support me, which I love and appreciate and adore every single time she does, but she's not seeing beauty in the game. She's watching to see if the ball goes in the basket of my team, and then she knows when to clap and to cheer and to give me a hug at halftime and a hug after the game, right? And that's great. But when I watch a game of basketball, the more sort of knowledge I acquire about what it means to play good basketball, I see a beauty in it. I see a beauty in the patterns of how players position themselves in different sets, and the amount of skill and mastery that it takes to do some of the things that I witnessed the best players in the world doing, because I know how many thousands of hours it takes to get to a skill level like that. So I need the knowledge of the game to see the beauty in it, right? But you can take another perspective and say there are certain things that are so beautiful because you know nothing about them. Take a sunset, for example, or the night sky. The reason, a part of the reason that these things are beautiful is because they're natural phenomena that we have very little ability to understand. They're so almost transcendental and divine, because you don't really know how a sunset is happening. You know, there'll be scientists that explain about the changes in wavelengths of light as a consequence of the angle of the sun or whatever bullshit, right? But when you're in that moment staring at it, it's so beautiful because you know that you couldn't have created it yourself. It's not man-made. It's some natural, complex phenomena that our ancestors have found beautiful and found meaning in for thousands of years, right? So there's two sides to it. Maybe the kind of linking concept between those two that's just popped into my brain is that maybe man-made things, like a game of basketball, you need to have an understanding of to see the beauty in it and see the mastery in it. But maybe the natural world is where you don't need knowledge to appreciate beauty. But it's interesting.
Yeah, I think an example where that is man-made, that you can just see it's beautiful, is like a Beethoven song, where it just hits you and you automatically associate it with like a swan and a ballet lady dancing, and like some things are just but that's like beyond like humanity to create a piece like a piece like Beethoven. So I think that beauty with knowledge creates meaning. It's like, for a kind of back to the marketing point, when you know what's behind what you're buying, it's a meaningful purchase. But or you might just kind of snatch something because it looks nice. But some things are so beautiful that they don't need knowledge, like you said with the night sky, like the sunset. Although maybe there's an argument of, well, when you look in the night sky, because of the existential importance it puts you in the world, and you kind of know that from it being like a mirror, then that kind of is the knowledge behind it. So,
Well, so you're saying in that look at the night sky allows you to know and understand how small you are. And that's part of the beauty, is that sort of existential deep breath or fear, depending on the way you think about it.
yeah.
Yeah.
And one thing on top of this as well, a side point is, I read a Nietzsche line today that said, one is one no longer loves one's knowledge sufficiently after one has communicated it. So once the transference of knowledge from that painting, you understand it, it's kind of, it doesn't hit the same for the second time round. And I think the first experience where you're being is always the best one because of that, where you've consumed the knowledge and then it's time of you've taken it. And I think that's the reason why the Mona Lisa is so famous, is because people still can't figure it out. The knowledge hasn't been taken. Like and it's why mystery is so important and so attractive. It's so attractive in relationships, and that's kind of a part of beauty, that a part of the knowledge, and that's the part of knowledge that is continuous. And yeah,
I think as humans, we have a real love for discovery of the unknown, and creativity is that pattern manifested in just like whatever thing you're doing, whether that's painting or writing or composing music or whatever it is, playing a sports game or whatever. Like the creativity is the discovery of new ways of thinking, new ways of acting, new ways of creating, and new images to display and new sounds to put together. It's that putting together of two unconnected things and connecting them, taking that unknown and bringing it into the known, and that's the process we get so much joy from. But then when the thing is known, when the painting's done, then that's where that knowledge has been left hemisphered. Let's say it's been decontextualized and put out into the world, and it's now its separate object thing. It's not that. It's no longer the process of discovery. It's now known territory, and so it doesn't give us so much joy. I think is what I got from that.
tell me about your mindset that allowed you to perform well in your recent tournament?
Yeah, so like I don't want to dwell on fucking material world results because like that I hate it. It makes me feel dirty thinking about like what I did and how things went well. But I'm only literally saying this to put it into context of what I'm then going to say, which is a sports psychology theory that I think is interesting. So I played in this tournament. It was a Euro Cup qualifiers in Switzerland. I played pretty well. I was happy with my performances, like coming off the bench. Played like 20 minutes a game on average. Top scored 2 of our 4 games. And then I got named in the All-Star team, which is like where coaches vote for a team or players that have impressed them, all the 5 coaches of the clubs, but they can't pick players from their own club. And then this team is 2 classifications, so it's from people all different disability levels. And then that's like the All-Star team for the tournament, and I was selected in that, right? But so therefore, what we conclude is Joel had a decent tournament, right? Now, those material results aside, I want to talk about what actually I think helped me do this. And it's something I haven't really talked about loads. I guess I've talked about it with mentors, like one-to-one in my life, and had discussions with a sports psychologist about it, but never talked about it on a podcast. So it might be interesting to see what people think about this. And I've actually only really formalized it and turned it into a theory yesterday morning when I got home and actually reflected on how the tournament went. So my idea is called the anti-alter ego. And I'll explain what I think that is and what it is for me, and then maybe how people can apply it in their own lives. So to me, the anti-alter ego is like the opposite side of what we usually think about when it comes to alter egos in sport. There's this notion that at a high level, an elite athlete might have this unrealistic extension of themselves that they kind of act out in moments when it matters, when they have to perform. It's often quite emotionally intense, right? Quite angry, quite dominant. And it's a sub-personality, one might say, a spirit that possesses them when they go and perform. Now, the best example of that people will be aware of is Kobe Bryant's idea of Black Mamba, right? That's who he was when he went on court to go and dominate. And then there was this whole philosophy that came from that, this Mamba mentality, right? And that was different to Kobe Bryant, who's the father of his children and the husband to his wife, etc., etc. He had this sub-personality that wasn't the whole of him. It was like this character that he was when he needed to go and dominate others in the sporting environment. So that's the alter ego that we usually consider in sport. But I have problems with that. And I talked about this with my sports psychologist because he suggested it to me as an idea. Joel, could you create an angry, emotionally intense version of yourself to go and be when it matters? And I went, well, I can see the utility in that. Obviously, it works. Many people at the highest level, Kobe Bryant being one of them, Tom Brady being another one in American football, these people have these personas, and it does bloody well. They can get to the top of their field. But for me, it feels like quite a toxic fuel source. One that works, one that will power the engine, but I don't think it's spiritually healthy for me personally. Like the idea of me creating a narrative in my head that I want to go and dominate the other people I'm against on court, for me feels a little bit aggressive or overly aggressive. And I don't really want to play basketball in an aggressive way. I want to play basketball like it's an art form. The way I put it to my housemate in the sauna today, the way I put it to my housemate in the sauna today is that rather than being some aggressive, violent person, I want to be Mr. Miyagi from The Karate Kid. A very still, very peaceful man, but he knows how to fight. And you don't fuck with him. Do you know what I mean? So anyway, all that being said, this new idea then came into my brain of the anti-alter ego. And the anti-alter ego, rather than looking at this unrealistic maybe extension of ourselves to be in the moments when it matters, when there's pressure, it's actually to look at the weakest, most vulnerable, most insecure parts of who we really are. The parts of ourselves that we don't often want to talk about or want to be in the world, and the parts of ourselves that we're not proud of. And do what you do and perform for and in honor of that weak and vulnerable part of yourself. Now that sounds weird, and let me explain it in my own context for it to make sense. So throughout this tournament, and I've kind of been developing this over the last 6 months, my anti-alter ego, I'm calling the kid from Brixham, right? Brixham, the small town that I used to live in down on the south coast. And the kid from Brixham is a scared little boy that's very insecure and has no idea what to do with his life. He was thrust into the world and given a disability out of his own control, and so he's different from the other kids. He walks funny, he has to use a wheelchair, he's ostracized for that, he doesn't fit in. He's the boy who couldn't join in with traditional PE classes because the teachers didn't know what to do with him. He's the boy that struggled with self-esteem issues. He's the boy that then found a sport that he enjoyed because it created a community around him of other people with disabilities that made him feel accepted. And he's the boy who, and I remember this specific scenario, and this is one that I come back to when I want to sort of tap into my anti-alter ego, which is he's a 12-year-old boy that was crying his eyes out in the disabled toilet at Worcester University Arena when he was given the opportunity to play in a under-15s game, the one game that his dad came to come and watch, and he didn't play, right? And that feeling that, my relationship with my dad isn't great, and he just came to watch this one game, and I didn't even see the floor. I just sat on the bench. And I remember going to the toilet with my mum and just bawling my eyes out, feeling so vulnerable and insecure and confused and lost, right? And I remember that. I remember how painful that was. And so that's this weak, vulnerable, insecure part of myself that is so true and real, and he's in me. And he is the guy that feels anxiety. He's the guy that doesn't feel good enough. He's the guy that possesses me when I feel a state of negative emotion or worry or fear. But this tournament, Jacob, I turned that around. And I remember writing one WhatsApp message to my mentor on the first evening of the tournament and going, whatever happens tomorrow and whatever I do onwards in my sporting career before I retire, everything I do is going to be for that little kid from Brixham who didn't feel good enough. And then every time my name was called up from the bench, and I remember it specifically when I had to shoot free throws in the third game, I thought about my 12-year-old self crying his eyes out in the toilet. And I thought how proud he'd be to see where I am and what I'm doing. And when you have that mentality that you're doing it for that vulnerable side of yourself, you're doing it out of compassion, then all the bullshit of how many points you've scored or what other people are saying to you, what trash talk they're using, or how the score of the game is, or how efficiently you're shooting, all of that kind of squashes into nothingness. And you just smile at what's around you, at how mental it is that you got there. Because really, Jacob, I'm still that little kid from Brixham. I've just done thousands of hours of training, and I've read a bunch of books, and I've got some qualifications, and I've yapped on a podcast for hundreds of hours, but I'm still him. He's still in there. And so this idea of doing it for this weaker and inverted commas part of yourself, I really like, because I think rather than it being a toxic fuel source like the anger and the emotional intensity of like Kobe Bryant's Black Mamba, it's doing it out of love for who you really are. And it's a fuel source that I think can last a lifetime. And most importantly, which is one final point I'll say before I open the floor for you to comment, is that seeing it as a kid from Brixham keeps me grounded and keeps me humble. Like, it was literally one thing that I said when I sent, I think it was my mum, a picture of like me in the All-Star 5, and there was other guy in the All-Star 5 who was like a Paralympic gold medalist in 2016. And I just put, how is the kid from Brixham, in a photo next to the Paralympic gold medalist? It's like that, putting it in that perspective, it's humbling, it's powerful, it's compassionate, and it's not toxic. So that's my sports psychology theory. And I haven't seen, there might be some information out there on this kind of thing, but it's a new thought for me.
It's one of my favourite theories that you've presented. I think it's very fundamental for everyone that needs to perform. The alter ego, right? The alter ego reminded me of David Goggins' version of Goggins that he gets into.
Yeah, exact same thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And I like how you described how to achieve this, Mr. Miyagi. This guy that does it for himself and not others. Because really the alter ego, I think, he's just trying to beat others and trying to be dominant over them so that they're submissive from him. And your really good theory the other week about how the problem with being either dominant or submissive is they're both negative outcomes, I think is quite a very interesting and important message. And so the solution then is what you just discovered, is doing it for yourself, beating your younger self. Because even if you take the side of things of, okay, my fuel source, it isn't being dragged, it's being driven. But then that person that's still being driven is accountable to a judge that you're never going to please. So I think the Mr. Miyagi is something we should all strive for. I mean, what a sick character. Like, to be in control and to spiritually move with a craft and be one with it. And yeah, I like this theory a lot.
Well, like, if you think about it, what is the fundamental motivation for anyone that wants to improve at something? Any domain of self-improvement, right? A sport, a business, a job, you've read a book by Robert Greene or whatever that, right? Whatever that is, you start meditating, you start journaling, whatever the hell, you start going to the gym, whatever. What drives that fundamentally? It's not feeling good enough. Because if you felt good enough, you probably wouldn't bother with all of that. There's still a part of you that is driven by that insecurity. And this mentality doesn't ignore that. I think the emotionally intense, toxic, angry alter ego perspective is to ignore the confused, insecure parts of yourself and become this person you're not in order to perform in some sort of environment. But this anti-alter ego, this compassionate side of things, recognizes that a lot of the reason that I've become the athlete I've become is because I was a little boy from a small town that felt like he wasn't good enough. And then recognizing that, I almost take back the power and take back the control and recognize that little boy and want to nurture his self-esteem and make him competent in the world. And then, yeah, all the outside influences and all the bullshit and other people's opinions and your competition with other people and rivalries and shit just kind of dissolves into irrelevancy. And it's right. Mr. Miyagi was a kung fu teacher that lived in a little hut and just made tea and like clipped the leaves of bonsai trees. He didn't care about all the bullshit, but he had that power and that wisdom, but he didn't feel the need to share it with everyone, just the people that were willing to listen. And there's great wisdom in that, I think. And so I think going into, I think generally Euro Cup was a fantastic preparation for World Championships because I probably will have a very similar role in that team. If I'm lucky enough to be selected and stay injury free. And so the kid from Brixham as a philosophy towards basketball is something that's going to be developed a lot over the next 3 months and will hopefully be important and useful when the time comes to sort of perform and do it. But it literally, mate, it was vivid. I remember the free throw that I was about to take against the Swiss team on Saturday morning, bouncing the ball. I thought about my old self crying in that toilet, and I was like, look at me now. And then when I took that shot, I had no doubts that I was going to make it,
If you start your self-improvement business passion project out of insecurity, that's fine, but keeping it year after year, I feel like that's when the world is like never enough. It's where Hormozy described it, his experience of it as, okay, I want to make more than my dad. Okay, I want to make more than my dad did for a year. Okay, I want to make more than my dad did for his whole life, as his dad never approved of him doing business. And I think of it in myself as in life, what percentage am I driven, dragged, or do I do it to make my younger self proud? And it's a split between all of them right now, which I think is healthier than just at the start when I was just dragged. So I actually want to ask you, I have a younger memory of you, and I feel like it has you've overcome it. I remember when we were younger, and you tried to do a speech. I think at your dad's wedding. I think you didn't. If my memory is right, I think you didn't do it, and you got a bit upset. And I feel
Yeah.
like, and I
Shit,
feel like,
I haven't thought about that in years.
yeah. If this is right, I think you were supposed to do a speech, and I think you were too nervous to do it, and so you didn't do it, and then someone
Like,
had
right.
to. One
Yeah,
of our uncles had to kind of talk to you about it and stuff like that, and I feel like that has linked now until how you're a very good speaker, and you have a passion for public speaking, and you're a podcaster, things like that. I mean, that is unconsciously just kind of, you know,
yeah. Mate, Jake, I'm sort of, yeah, I could tear up at that, man. I haven't thought about that my brain's probably just like boxed that memory away. I knew that my dad's wedding wasn't an ideal day for me, but I forgot that I was supposed to do a speech, and I remember I cried with just nerves. I couldn't do it, and I remember the feeling of being a failure after that point. With all the context of the fact that I was my dad's child from another relationship, and I didn't always really feel like I gelled with your side of the family and things. And then I go to sort of try and do something nice in that environment, and I shit the bed. I mean, when did they get married? I want to say 2015. So what would I have been, 11, 12 years old?
I feel like 10 years ago is pretty correct.
Yeah. And so that's such a yeah, my heart's warmed by that comparison, because I go, right, if I had to do a speech at my dad's wedding today, I reckon I'd smash it. And it's like, yeah, that memory you've got, Jacob, that is a perfect example of the little boy from Brixham who was just sort of confused and didn't feel competent enough. And obviously he's an 11-year-old boy, so he's not going to be competent enough to do a great speech, but you know what I mean? It's that anxiety, that anxious little boy. That's it, and that's real. That's something that happened. God, that's mad. I've forgotten about that, but it's true.
There's going to be hopefully there'll be a 30-year-old version of us that will look back at the 20-year-old version and be proud.
100%, man. 100% of how far we've come, and that's the amazing thing about life. This amazing thing about life is we can reflect on how far we've come.
It's all an ignorance reflection. It's like you look back a couple of years ago and you think, if only I did that thing, that would have made these things work, and then I would be way forward in this, and then I'd have more money and more time. It's all just a quest for knowledge that we're trying to achieve as well.
I mean, didn't we say when we started doing this that one of the great things about it is that we can listen back to our 18-year-old selves when we're 45 and realize how stupid we were? I mean, that's beautiful. We're failing publicly so that later down the line we can laugh at ourselves, Jacob. Can you imagine it when you come visit me with your wife and your kids, and we put an episode of the Open Minded podcast on in the late hours of the evening from when we were 20, and just laugh at ourselves? It's going to be such a beautiful moment. And it's it's that self-discovery. That's what it is. Seeing how far you've come, discovering who you can be. And yeah, I mean, it's just, God, that memory's kind of taking me back. It's weird that, and that's only in a 10-year time span, how much we've changed.
Do you reckon that had an unconscious that sparked an unconscious fuel to maybe try harder in school and be more vocal?
Well, I've always been a performer in ways, like the school plays that I did and stuff, and like the school talent contest when I'm in primary school, singing like Michael Jackson at the age of 8 and stuff. I've always had it, probably actually fueled by, again, insecurity, that I liked the idea of people clapping for me. I liked that validation. I don't know, I think it's very transparent of me to admit that, even though it doesn't put me in the best light. But that's always been the case. I've always liked the feeling of being listened to, I guess, and that's why I have a podcast and I yap to the people that listen to this. But Yeah, I think there's definitely an element of that. I think also a big part of why I look up to Jordan Peterson so much, especially old Peterson, like pre him being famous, going back to his old psychology lectures, because there's something so gripping about a guy that can articulate himself that profoundly and that sort of fluidly. I think it's a power. I think it's a skill. It's a meta skill in life, because I've realized it now in my friendships and in my relationships that I can be playful with my language, and it kind of helps me connect with people and be a bit jokey and flirtatious, and it's like it helps in that domain of my life, but it also helps me then when I come to talking to people that are important, like uni staff members or job interviews later down the line and stuff. And really for when I want to do the things I want to do in my career, like write the books and do the talks and stuff, like it's a meta skill for life. Writing and speaking and thinking are meta skills. So yeah, I guess I have worked on them and have improved, and I think there's no upper limit to that. It's just going to go and go and go, and I'm so pleased that we're here so early, Jacob, because what are we, a year, nearly 2 years into this now?
Mm.
You know, where are we in 10 years? It's just it's mind-boggling.
I guess one way to think about it is that's speech was maybe your low point, and when you realise, like, at least you failed, and you kind of realise that, and that's how you get better and you learn. There's a it's that bottom point that you finally go, okay, let's do something about this. It's like things have to get worse before they get better,
Mm.
and you gotta want it. You you gotta have that embarrassing moment where you fumble to then want to overcome it.
Yeah, yeah. You can look at it in both contexts that we've talked about from my past in this conversation. There's the boy who burst into tears when he had to do a speech at his dad's wedding, and there's the boy who burst into tears because he didn't feel good enough on the basketball court and he didn't get played, and all the people around him were celebrating the fact that they just won an important game but that he had no part in. And it's like that pain of not feeling good enough, not feeling up to standard. That was then what maybe unconsciously or consciously motivated me to work on those things. And I think that's okay. I feel like there's this notion that we shouldn't be driven by our insecurities, but maybe there's something beautiful in that you can kind of alchemize yourself. The things you don't like about yourself, you can work on them, and you can turn that lead into gold. You can build competence. You can come a long, long way. And when you do that, I think you feel great meaning from it. Like I remember now I remember that memory of 10-year-old Joel, fumbling a speech, and I think back to when I left sixth form and like the last sixth form assembly or whatever, I could go and do a speech in front of like the whole school on an average Thursday, and that would feel fine. And it's like, God, I get so much joy from thinking about that kind of stuff. And people, this is like, I don't love talking about myself in this way because I do feel a bit dirty and grotty, but I need to emphasize then that people, you can do this for yourself. You will have that insecure, weak, vulnerable part of yourself that you don't like, because that's fundamental to being human. And you can notice them because they're screaming out to be noticed, and you could be compassionate towards them, and build them up and encourage them like a good parent would do. You can parent yourself. You can genuinely encourage yourself to go, right, what do I want to get good at? What do I want to improve at? And you can go and do it. And that's like a pillar of what good life is about, you
Didn't
know?
you used to talk a lot in assemblies as well?
Yeah, I made a decision because sixth form was post lockdown where like Joel, I'm talking in third person now, which I do a lot, but Joel decided that he wanted to sort of get good at stuff and get good at life. And during that time, I like want to take as many opportunities as I can to do public speaking, like assemblies and stuff. And that's why I applied to be in the student leadership team, etc., etc., because I just wanted more opportunities to just flex that muscle of what does it feel like to go on stage? What does it feel like to talk in front of people that are expecting things from you? And so, yeah, it just became less scary, I guess, over time.
I've got a cool psychological theory for you. It's by a philosopher called David Hume, and it's called The Missing Shade of Blue. So this is the theory. If one were to line up all the shades of blue, but one was missing, would your brain be able to fill it in? So this is what he couldn't answer this question. He was normally a rationalist, and he would say no, but he wasn't totally sure, and he thought your brain, there's still something in it that you maybe could. And in life, I feel like in life there's always a missing shade of blue, because we can't possibly live every experience. There's always some unknown. So, in other words, the question is, does all knowledge have to come from experience, or can the mind generate ideas beyond direct experience? I'll let you talk and then I'll say a bit more.
Well, I think it's I want to say wrong, but I think that's extreme. But I think it's assumptuous to think that we interact with reality as it is, because it's obvious that we don't. All of our experience is tainted by our cognitive biases and our belief systems about how reality works. That is often based on our childhood or our upbringing or previous experience. And so a lot of our experience is filled in by our mind before we even consciously experience it. And so it's difficult to then actually gain knowledge about what's really going on and what's really happening in the world, because we're so tainted by the sort of predictions that our mind makes about how things go. And those predictions are useful, like, God, they're how our ancestors survived and how we've got to this point as a species, by predicting, right, what's going to happen next in reality. And pretty much all of the time we are correct. But it blinds us also sometimes, and that's where we don't see maybe that missing shade of blue. We don't see some aspect of reality that's there because we are blinded by our perceptive mechanisms, so to speak.
A real life example, say when you're playing basketball, you need to score a buzzer beater. One of your players is fouled out. Should you run the play based on how you've run it before? Or should you admit that the guy isn't here, so we've got to generate new ideas?
It's like there's always, you can plan for some things in life, but there's always going to be that missing shade of blue that arises independent of the plan and completely out of the things that you thought about that could happen. It's like that. It kind of comes back to that, the map not being the territory idea that I talked about a couple of weeks ago. It's like you create a map of the world that you exist within, and because it's so accurate and it's so good and your mind is so effective at doing that, the majority of the time it doesn't feel like you're following a map. It feels like you're in the territory. It feels like you're in the real world. But then when something goes wrong, your expectations aren't met, or there's a mistake in your map, and suddenly your world falls apart, you fall into chaos, and suddenly you're in the big, wide, scary territory that's undiscovered and unknown. When that happens, that's when you realize you're in a map, okay? And so from that example, you have a set play of how you're going to run the last 3 seconds of a shot clock, and you have this 3-point shooter who teams are going to jump so you can run some sort of play. But yeah, if he's fouled out, then you're like, okay, well, now our map's not useful anymore. And now we're in the territory. Now we're in the unknown. There's always unexpected things about our lives that come along. And that doesn't mean don't create a map, but it means recognize that you're following a map. Because, when your map falls apart, that's when you experience big emotional shifts and emotional pain a lot of the time.
You can use pattern recognition, creativity, intuition from the past to make this decision, to form an illusion that makes this decision. But is that just a mix of shades of blue rather than the missing shade of blue itself? And I think that's the case. I don't think there's anything like experience for this missing shade of blue. It's like in a business context, you have to make you have to make a successful fizzy drink, and you look what's on the shelf, and you have to fill this missing gap in the mildew aisle of what drink can go here. And so you think to yourself, well, add a little bit of Coca-Cola, and make it a little bit spicy, and make a hot Coca-Cola version of drink and brand it like that. That'll be a bit more safe. That you can make it with a lot of margins, with a lot of economies of scale. You make it cheap enough, people will buy it, relatively safe. But and then it doesn't work, and something else works. That's a can of water with a skull as the logo, and it's called Liquid Death.
Mm. He's back.
Oh no, where did it go?
No, you said your recording has stopped, but everything up until now has been saved.
It's asking me to restart the studio.
To continue recording, tell them to stop and restart the studio recording.
Okay, I'll do that now.
Cool.
Okay, we're back.
Right. There's now 2 Joel Cliftons and 1 Jacob, but that's okay.
I've got 2 Jacobs and 1 Joel Clifton. Okay. Let me try and. Did you hear the Liquid Death? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
My recording is still going. Sorry, my recording is still going from like the time that it was. Like, it's saying we're on minute 48 now. Is that the same for you?
I'm 30 seconds, but yeah, it should be fine. Normally,
my recording will be one thing, but yours will be 2 files, hopefully. Okay, cool. Yeah, carry on.
Yeah. You can't predict that. Therefore, with the Liquid Death example, without the direct experience, I don't think that you can. I don't think your mind can predict it, because it would just get it wrong.
Yeah. We make predictions all the time. I remember Alan Watts talking about people who say they don't have faith are lying to themselves, because we all use faith every single day. We put one foot in front of the other and have faith that the floor beneath our feet isn't going to fall through to the center of the earth. Or whenever we engage in any sort of social interaction or relationship, we have faith that that other person isn't going to betray us. Or when we do something, we have faith that doing that thing is more worth it than not doing it. And so, yeah, we're always creating sort of predictions of what's right to do in reality and how reality might work and what might go successfully. And there are always red herrings. There are always things that we didn't think of that go wrong. There is always a missing shade of blue that our mind doesn't consider. And I guess that shows the sort of the pitfalls in creating a plan or trying to structure or plan your life too deeply, because who knows what could come along and just shift everything. Who knows what that missing shade of blue is that you haven't considered? Could be anything.
Yeah, I think life is just about making decisions. And so with this example, it just means, like, don't make expectations. Because, like, what's the point? They're just going to get ruined. And I like your example of faith, because you might step on a drain that hasn't been screwed up properly and your leg falls right through. So Yeah, I've got one more point, unless you had any others.
No, no. Let's do your last point, and that'll probably take us up to the hour mark.
Okay, cool. Oh, I also have this written down. I like ideas like this because it's like, if you were to ask me create a new color, and then I would be like, okay, I reckon it's a bit kind of like turquoise, and it's like turquoise, but it's a bit more purpley. But you actually can't like describe a new color. You just say like things. Oh, it's like it's a bit like a thing in the ground, like a tree thing. Like you can't actually like make a new color. You can't do it. You just and like you try and mix purple with turquoise, you just get like a bluey grey thing. Okay, so this last point is gonna challenge me the most, but I think it's there's quite a lot to it. So I'm reading Beyond Good and Evil. It's going quite well, and I looked into a lot of Nietzsche's critiques on religion, and the thing is with Nietzsche is you don't agree with what he says, but everything he says makes you think, and I think they're useful to make you think. So his critiques are a couple. Yeah, it said Joel Clifton's recordings failed. Your recording has stopped, but everything up until now has been saved. Your things just left.
Okay, we're back, and it's starting to record me again. So carry on where you were.
Okay. The fundamental thing where it comes from is, why should you strive for success and find meaning in this world existentially when you could just be a good Christian and live a life of peace and just be a nice monk that has spiritual growth? Why should you get your meaning, your values externally through God rather than internally? And that's quite a difficult question, but these are the arguments for it. So the first argument is, well, God is dead anyway. And I looked into this a bit more. He says it's called The Gay Science, and there's this nice illustration about this, where there's this madman wandering around with this lantern at night, and he's going, "Where's God? Where's God? I can't find him." And then all these atheists around him are all laughing at him, saying, "You're wasting your time. Ha ha ha. What are you doing, you madman?" And then he's like, "You don't understand what you've done, guys. Like, you're going to become nihilistic. You don't understand. This is the biggest question on earth. You can't. This isn't nothing. You don't understand what's going to happen centuries to come." And from this, Nietzsche says, "Okay, so if you lose your meaning from a collective, you then have to." He then invents something called the Übermensch, which is to embrace the will to power, to get our meaning internally through values, and this is the solution to the void of nihilism. So I've explained about God was killed by science, because science had a more of a was deemed more of an important truth than religion. So there's also a side point to this that I thought, which is quite deep. It's like, well, right now, are we living in an age where love is about to die through technology, the
Mm.
decreasing connection, and through hedonism? That's a very deep idea. Um, but I would argue that, well, it's a decline. It's not a complete death. He needs to really sharply and to strike him to be really controversial, but it's just a decline. And yeah, I mean, if both God and love are dead, then you're just a robot. It's a horrible reality. But yeah, that's his first argument, that God is dead anyway. The second argument is that religion is for the weak. So very controversial. And he says life in God is the most elaborate and ultimate fear of truth. Is a life that gives comfort to suffering. There's no striving for greatness in this life. You neglect heaven on earth for a chance at heaven in the afterlife.
Mm.
Religion recycles old dogmas and encourages herd mentality to create slave morality. So what that means is it rewards some submissiveness, obedience, complacency, the nice guy syndrome, rather than like confidence, power, and accomplishment. To see the stars as not above you, but that you are a part of them. Which, yeah, that's an interesting metaphor. And as I said, this Ubermensch, the opposite side of things, it embraces life fully, like even the struggles, and finds joy in existence without needing an afterlife to make it worthwhile. Almost like this world is just kind of a waiting room for an afterlife. So they're the two main arguments. Yeah, what's your thoughts?
It is interesting. The idea that, I think it was Karl Marx that said religion's the opioid of the masses. It's this drug that gives us some sort of narrative to think about our lives so we aren't hit with the crushing weight of the fact that we're just some like mortal individual in some massive impersonalized biological process, and we're just destined to just die and be a sort of measly part of the larger life of the universe. And we need some sort of meaning, and religion provides us with that. It's a package. It's like a package holiday for how to live life, rather than going and exploring the world yourself, I guess. Whereas Nietzsche's perspective of creating your own values, I do like. I like that idea that I can decide who my God is and what that is. I guess maybe a nice way of thinking about it is when people ask me, do I believe in God? The answer is yes, but with the caveat of I don't know what it is yet. I know it's there. I know there's something divine to life. I know there's something deeper and more meaningful. I know that there's some real love, some real truth, some real divinity and power and mystery in this life. And I know that it's there, but I don't quite know what it is yet. Whereas religion goes, this exists and we know what it is and you should believe in it. I'm more like, I do believe in it, but I don't know what it is. And that process of figuring out what it is, that's a joyful part of my own spiritual discovery. But then I'm not criticizing or disregarding religion. I think it's great for getting people onto a better narrative than nothing matters and there's nothing is more moral or less moral. There is a way of being that is better than another way of being, and religion is a set of instructions for how to be better, be a better human in the world, and it has its imperfections, and the human ego gets involved and all that kind of stuff. But it's positive in the end. So yeah, I don't know if that really answers your question,
No,
but
it's good thoughts. And it is a hard question. I've been thinking about this a lot. I just kind of like sit in the coffee shop and then just let my mind wander for half an hour. And I connected it to, well, what the solution, as you'd kind of expect, is to balance the drill sergeant and the Alan Watts. So try and do a bit of both. But this, let's bring another question that stems from this. A big part of it is, do we optimize for unity, where we've got all these people believing in the same thing and with all the same values, or do we allow diversity with all these different values and all these different beliefs of how to live life? And the best case scenario is, well, if you imagine a country where we want everyone to be united in one religion, or do we want a country where everyone's diverse and have their own ways of being? And I think the answer is a balance of both because, well, the advantage of being united is you have common goals, people get along more because they've got things in common. There's probably less ego, there's less selfishness. But if everyone thinks in the same way, then you don't get new perspectives, you don't get innovation. However, too much diversity, then you're very individualistic. Everyone's just in it for themselves. But there's more of a quest for the truth, which I think is quite important, than just accepting it and going along with whatever the common notion is. And it's like... Oh shit, my thing turned off. Okay, I'm back. It's like the thing I was thinking about the debate that we had with those feminists, and the thing that I really liked about it was a quest for truth. And even with like both parties disagreeing, I think that quest for truth is so very, very important. And I personally like this idea with coming up with your own values and sharing them, because, well, it's like I like to figure things out for myself. I like this. I like the I like the Frank Sinatra thing of I did it my way.
Yeah, I was. This sounds unrelated, but I don't think it is. I'll try and bring it round. But last night actually, I was talking about creativity, and who have I stole this idea from? Who's that guy that Huberman's friends with that that is like he gives his opinion professionally on music? What's his name? Rick Rubin.
Fantano.
Say again.
Anthony Fantano.
No, that's not it. He's I want to say no. Is it Rick Rubin?
He did. Oh, Rick Rubin. Yeah.
The guy that. Let me just Google Rick.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it is.
I think it was them. I think it was them, but I could be chatting shit. But anyway, they said creativity can only happen with the right amount of limitation. So you don't want so much limitation that you can't come up with new ideas, right? That you don't want a world where, things are the way they are and they will always be that way and no one should think differently. Think, George Orwell, 1984, controlling government state ways of thinking. You know what I mean? That level of authoritarian use of power, right? That's not what we want in creativity. We don't want maximum limitation, but we also don't want no limitation, because then you've got no art form. You've got everything. You've got the chaos of infinity. And how can you create something new out of that? It's like, it's not possible. It's like you can't even grasp anything and manipulate it, because it's everything. There's no limitation. It's just chaotic potential everywhere. That's too much. You want the right amount of limitation. You want to limit yourself to your craft, which might be paint and the canvas. It might be the keys of a piano. It might be the capacities of verbal articulation, right? Limitation within that one specific field. But within that limitation, you're able to express new ideas and put different ideas together with different novel connections and all of that. That's what creativity is. It requires a level of limitation. And so, back to your idea about belief systems, we don't want no limitation. We don't want people looning around sort of claiming that reality is any way that they feel. Right? There are fundamental truths to the world. But we also don't want maximal limitation, like this is the way you should think about reality. We don't want that either. We want, like the creatives, we want the right amount of limitation. We want to be educated on the fact that killing someone probably isn't good. Raping people isn't good. Stealing from people isn't good. Right? There are fundamental moral truths about what it means to be a good human. But who your God is and the nature of them and where they come from and whether psychedelic drugs are religious or whether they're just brain chemistry, or whether religion is a load of fiction or whether it has some profound mythological truth to it, those opinions you can come up to that on your own. I think as long as you're not harming people, which is like the necessary degree of limitation on the way you can think and the way you can be in the world, as long as you're ticking those boxes that you don't make the world worse than it currently is, then within that limitation, you have the creativity to do the things and think about the things and believe the things that you want to do. And that is that Goldilocks point of faith, of belief. And human beings, we've got it wrong in the past. We swing on this pendulum, but as long as, like you say, we're trying to pursue the right truths, because it's also, the pursuit of truth is not like a dogmatic, like, use of power. It's an investigation. When we had that conversation with Isla and the other bloke, we agreed on a lot of things. Like the limitations were set. We both agree that people being like abused is not good. People being taken the freedom of their opportunities away is not good, right? We both agree on that. But within that, of like, well, what's too much of a certain thing? What's too much free thinking in terms of this stuff? What does it really mean to be a good man and a good woman? What does it mean to be a good father and a good mother? And can they be the same thing? And all that. Those questions within that limitation of, right, abuse is not good, harming people is not good. But where's the line of how we create a great world for our children and our relationships? Those questions within those fundamental truths are interesting and important to investigate. So that was a big ramble, but I feel like I'm in the same conversation as you.
I like it. It's an interesting conclusion that we need limits, we don't need limits.
You need the right amount of limitation. Yeah.
And that's the line between like chaos and order, I feel like.
Exactly.
That's exactly it, yeah. And yeah, you need kind of the yin without the yang. And that's where, like, you don't want no freedom at all. You don't want complete freedom. There needs to be a structure, and also I feel like what's in between, in the middle of that yin yang, is you versus you. It's not it's not the individualistic against. It's not like you versus the world, and it's not like everyone helps each other. It's you versus you. Like this. That's kind of the theme of this conversation that I think also Nietzsche talks about, of existentialism. And like when you think about it, like as you're born, you're suffering. I heard something that was like, when babies like cry about teething, it's not that it hurts, it's just that it's the most painful thing that they've ever experienced. And then from this, you build up suffering. There's levels and levels, thresholds and thresholds. I mean, right now, we're suffering because we have the lack of resources. In the next wave of the next chapter of life, we're going to be suffering because we've got obligations and things to provide for. It's continuously this you versus you throughout life, and then that's why we have this natural will to power. That's this drive, this energy that is all inside of us. So yeah, I think that might be a good place to end.
Yeah, man. We're all Sisyphus pushing that rock up that hill, and falling back again. And I can't quite recall who said this. I want to say it was maybe Orlando Baton from the School of Life, or someone that went on Chris Williamson's podcast. But the idea of imagining Sisyphus smiling didn't we talk about that in the episode with Kai? I feel like we did.
Yeah.
That's where I've got it from. I've got it from my own podcast. Well, that's a bit sort of egoic, isn't it? But yeah, that's it. Push the rock up the hill, struggle, increase the threshold of suffering, but find meaning in that, and come up with your own truths about how you want to live your life and who the hell you want to be. And it's a great point to end. So thanks, Jacob. I've enjoyed today's conversation.
Thank you. That was a good theory that you formed. I like that a lot. And thanks for everyone for listening.